everyone. This is Cody Marshak, Director for the Center for Global Engagement, and I'm sitting here with Sheila Schulte, the Associate Vice President of International Programs and the Senior International Officer for the University of North Georgia, where she has served for 8 years, but will soon be leaving UNG to start her next chapter of retirement. So Sheila, thanks so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So Sheila, your career has spanned 30 plus years in the field of international education. You've worked at multiple institutions in 3 different states, including a time in DC at NASA headquarters, which is the largest association in the field of international education worldwide. But let's go back to the very beginning. Was there anything about your childhood or youth that got you interested in international education and put you on track to make this your life's work?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I grew up on a farm near a town of about 600 people, and I graduated high school with 27 others, of which I knew the majority of those 27 since kindergarten. And so very safe environment. And that environment was great to grow up in, but I also felt like I really wanted to spread my wings by the time I had graduated high school. And so as a part of that, so I knew I was going to go to college. I was I'm a first generation college student. And it's interesting because when you ask about sort of the connection with international education, you sort of never know what will impact you, I think. And a couple of events from my childhood, I think, did open the doors for me to think about different cultures and difference in general. And so one of those was, I was probably about a 6-year-old when my mom took me to a powwow. And so the indigenous people of Iowa are the Meskwaki. And so we went to a Meskwaki powwow, and I was just totally blown away. I thought it was really cool. And when we came home, that's when I started to sort of learn the oral history of my family's interaction with Meskwaki over time. So my great-grandfather homesteaded, and the Meskwaki would continue to camp and hunt on obviously what was their land, which was now homesteaded by my great-grandfather. And so just learning about the interactions between my family and the Meskwaki was super interesting to me. And about that same time, a neighbor during a spring plow unearthed a large what turned out to be a back molar, so a large tooth of a mastodon. And so this was also, all kids like dinosaurs, right? And so this was really cool, and was just amazing to me to think about the fact that mastodons would have just been right here, right? On our land. So I think all of that sort of sparked my interest in beginning to think about both living and material culture. And then that led to my wanting to study anthropology, and that led to a career in international education.
Oh, very nice. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
Well, over the past 3 decades, how would you say the definition of international education has changed, and what has remained the constant that kept you grounded on this career path?
Yeah, so I think that we've seen a lot of positive change. I think traditionally, particularly study abroad, was really seen for the elite, right? And traditionally students went to Western Europe. And I think that over my time in the field, it's become a lot more accessible. So barriers have been lowered financially, it's more affordable. And it's just seen and promoted as something for everyone, which I think is wonderful. And it's also, there's been a shift away, not just basically towards the global south. So the locations as well that students are interested in going is now all over the world, not just in certain areas, right? Another shift has been the idea that difference, we can learn about difference both locally and globally. And so, and whether you're doing it locally or globally, you're learning these skills of perspective taking, of adaptation, of resilience. So whether you're doing that sort of in your local community or globally, both are good. And I think there's been a shift in that idea of global learning, as well as what sometimes is called internationalization at home. And that has led to things like Study Away, and a lot more global learning programming on our campuses. And then you asked about the constant, and I think the constant might be that we deal with change all the time, right? Because international educators are really responding to what is happening geopolitically around the world. So we have to be aware and be willing to pivot as we need to, based on what's happening around the world. And the other constant, though, I think that I'm proud of is that despite all of these different situations around the world, despite the pivots, I think in the US in general, we have very much been highly focused on student support and student success, no matter what is happening. So, that's one great constant.
Very nice. So now let's shift the topic more towards you personally. For much of your tenure in the field, you have been a leader serving in senior level positions. So how has your leadership style evolved over the past 3 decades?
Yeah. I mean, I think the evolution has come based on the work context. And so I sort of view it as there are sort of 3 different ways to lead. You need to manage up, you need to manage down, and you need to manage across. So managing up means that your leadership understands the work and that you are able to advocate for the resources needed to get the work done on your campus. Managing across basically means that you are connected with offices and faculty members, and that they understand what you do, what your office does, and how you can be of assistance to them. And those partnerships, managing across, can also mean partnerships outside of the United States as well. And then the managing down piece just means that you have a team that's effective and knows their roles and is willing and happy to be doing it. And so in my time, I have noticed that, usually one of those needs more work than the other 2. And so just prioritizing, like understanding the needs and what's missing, and then being able to fill that void, whether it's up, across, or down. And sometimes it's 2 out of the 3, right? So just kind of depends on what's happening at that time at that institution. I will say that it's pretty rare to have all 3 going gangbusters at the same time. But it has happened a few times over my career, and those are the times when you just know you need to get as much done as you can, right? So yeah, that's how. So sort of thinking about filling the void that's there is,
I see,
how I would describe that.
Yeah, very insightful. It sounds like it's very contextual depending on the location you're at.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Well, throughout your career, we're wondering, has there been a specific figure or mentor who especially inspired you to keep going on this path?
Yeah. So I have been very lucky to have worked with a lot of amazing leaders within international education. And I think that I've learned something different from each of them based on what they excelled at So, I started at the University of Idaho, and my director there was Michael Whiteman. He was an expert in conflict resolution, particularly international conflict resolution. And so, it was amazing to observe him solve problems, right, in a very diplomatic way on our campus and bring people together to listen to them to solve those problems. At Emory, I worked for Leila Crawford, who I learned a ton from, and she was an amazing leader in NAFSA. And so really, I learned a lot about the pathway for professional development from her in this field. And she really encouraged all of her staff to take leadership roles. So that was great to work for her. At Georgia Tech, I worked for Harvey Charles, who's a master of partnerships, and so learned about partnerships, as well as Howard Rollins, who's the architect of Georgia Tech's international plan, so how to internationalize the curriculum, which is amazing, right? So I just learned a ton from all of those folks. I went to NAFSA, worked for Judy Judd Price and Marlene Johnson, and I really think sort of polished my business acumen with them. How do you run a business? How do you get people involved who are volunteers in that business and have them engage and feel ownership as members of a nonprofit organization? So, yeah. So I guess I would just say I've learned a lot from each of the folks that I've worked with. Certainly I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that maybe the most constant mentor I've had and guide I've had is my husband. Yeah. So Jim Mattingly has been there through the entire career. We have been married as long as I have been doing this work. And he has moved around the U.S. and based on my career, he has provided excellent guidance and empathy along the way. He probably knows more about F1 and J1 visa holders than any sort of normal citizen needs to. And he's done that throughout with a great sense of humor. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful for him.
That's wonderful. You definitely need a sense of humor with this field.
Yeah.
And shout out to Jimmy.
Yeah.
Great to hear that. Okay, well, thank you for that. Next question we have for you is, when we look back at your career, you've worked with people across the globe from dozens of cultural, linguistic backgrounds in various contexts. Is there a particular memory that stands out to you, perhaps a challenging situation you encountered or something that surprised you about the cultures that you've worked within?
Yeah, so all the time, right? I mean, it's in countless ways. I can think of countless examples. And for me, that is actually the joy of doing the work, right? Is helping people, understanding human behavior and helping people adjust to whatever culture they're in. That's the fun part of this work. So I have lots and lots and lots of stories about that. I guess I can give you one example of after the Soviet Union broke up and we started seeing more students from Eastern Europe who had not been to the US before. Right, there was they have not been allowed to travel to the U.S. before, and they had been under a communist regime. So just sort of watching and learning from them about how to adapt to a new place was very interesting, and thinking about when they heard no. For them, that meant I just need to work on this to get to yes. Yeah. And so that was an interesting time, right? Because we have to say no a lot to students, right? And so I remember a graduate student in chemistry from Romania, George, explaining it, my having this conversation with him and him explaining that in Romania, for him, when he heard no, that he knew he would immediately think about what he needed to do to make it a yes. And that no was for the naive, right? So that meant, like, if you heard no and you just said, oh, it's a no, you're just being naive. You just, if you persist, you'll get there, you know? And so, you know, obviously in dealing with international students over so much time, I have really learned a lot from them, and it's been really very rewarding to, you know, think about people are acting as they would in their home culture and home system, and our role is to help them to adapt to the new one. So it's fun.
Yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. The last question I have for you is that you have started out your career from the very entry-level position as an international student advisor, and now you're ending your career as the Associate Vice President of International Programs and the Senior International Officer at UNG. What advice would you give to young people starting their first job in this field who aspire to follow in those footsteps?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of advice that I could give, but maybe the best and most general advice would be to remain curious. So ask a lot of questions, meet new people at work, make new friends at work, really think about understanding your role and then how you can improve that role. So basically being a lifelong learner and just remaining curious throughout, and keeping students at the center of that as well. I think by doing that, being the lifelong learner as well as building a network, all of that will pay dividends for you over your entire career. I know it certainly has for me. So yeah, remain curious.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sheila, I could go on and ask you all kinds of questions, but I want to be mindful of your time. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this discussion?
Yeah, I guess I would just say that I'm really delighted that UNG gave me the chance to be a senior international officer. I very much enjoyed working here with the staff, with faculty, with the leadership. So yeah, thank you. I'm super grateful for my time at the University of North Georgia.
Wonderful. Well, I can speak on behalf of our department and on UNG as a whole to say we have nothing but gratitude for the years of service that you've given to this university. And we wish you all the best in your next chapter.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.